horrors of Britain's worst ever grooming scandal revealed, with up to 1,000 kids drugged and abused. That means sexually abused. 1,000 rapes in this one area called Telford alone. And this is where the mass undocumented migrants came and settled. It's called the Telford sex scandal. This girl that you see here, Lucy Lowe, was raped at the age of 13 by Azhar Ali Mahmoud. She gave birth to his son at the age of 14. At the age of 16, the abuser set her, her mother, and her sister on fire inside their house in the year 2000. This was covered up. They said, we don't have any migrant problem. The Telford sex gang ringleader, Mubarak Ali, is set to be freed early after serving only 5 years out of a 22-year jail sentence. This is no justice. This is a travesty of justice. And you know, if we had a chance for revival again from God in England, how many pastors would speak about justice? But they don't talk about it now. They don't do it in church now. What if they get more power? Hey, more power, more church members, more tithes and offerings, more corruption. I'm not blaming pastors. You know I love pastors. But where are you speaking out against this? Because this is a gospel issue. If we're not known as ministers of justice, who is? If not we, who? If not now, when? Here's the official UK response to 1,000 rapes of their children. See how Christian this nation is now. Not much. Police officers in court are accused of destroying and creating false evidence in child abuse cases. And there once was a world, a civilization, where people were fine without so much police. You know the west of the United States? You believe it was wild, wild west because you watched too many Hollywood movies. In fact, we know the criminals from that time. Some famous names. If you're American, you better rattle off one or two names. The reason you know the criminals, you know why? Because there weren't that many. You know, what was the one, Black somebody? You guys know these? Here we have Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly was famous. They have their own Ned Kelly. There's like a handful. A handful that any American could name off. Why do you know these names that appear in Hollywood movies? Because there wasn't a criminal problem. Because people policed their own community. Neighbors took care of each other. People, if they own land, if they're developing it, they want to live in a safe place. The Wild West was very peaceful without any police. Now that's the narrative they don't want you to hear. Is that possible, to have peace, prosperity without much government interference, without much police interference? That's how most of life was for thousands of years. Of course, there's abuse as well in their countries that were not peaceful, but in general, anywhere where there was the gospel took hold, people were moral, they respected God and loved their neighbor, it was peaceful. So these police officers destroyed evidence of child abuse cases. Now they said on BBC, the Telford abuse victim numbers were sensationalized, says the police chief. Okay, so it's not 1,000, it's what? What would not be sensational? 700 would not be sensational? 600? 500? What are you saying? If it's half the case, the response is, it was over-sensationalized. Sounds like somebody covering up their own tail and justifying their own job and their own failure. Well, how about the politicians? How are they going? Theresa May, who's the Prime Minister, the female Prime Minister of England, and Amber Rudd suppress Westminster child abuse documents. Why? for national security reasons. Well, what does that mean? Who are the perpetrators of all these gang rapes? They wonderful white Brits that have been there all that time? Or are they the migrants that have come in unassimilated? We were told, do you remember? We were told women would rule better than men. Now we have evidence. Many, many female leaders all around the world. How about this one? Patricia Hewitt called for the age of consent to be lowered to 10. I'm sorry if I sound a little bit upset. In response to 1,000 kids being gang raped over the course of 30 years, the elected official says, well, why don't we just lower the age to Sharia compliant age? Sharia compliant would be 9, I guess. Why don't we just go to 9 then? Why 10, Miss Hewitt? It turns out women are just the same as men. Power corrupts everybody. Well, what's England's priority? If the police aren't solving the problem of 1,000 rape cases, what is their priority? You want to know what the police is actively doing right now? It's this week's news. This week we learn Lauren Southern, Britt Pettibone, and Martin Sellner, with zero ties to terrorism, were considered a threat to the UK, but not the jihadists in the UK who hold up signs that read, "Death to Britain," "Behead those who insult Islam," and "Democracy, go to hell." I predicted this in 2014, during the blood moons. I said, this is an invasion of Europe, and this invasion of Europe fulfills the Daniel chapter 2 sign. In Daniel chapter 2, verses 41 to 43, God predicted that at the end, the European empire, the new Roman Empire, will crumble with iron being mixed with clay. Two groups of people that will come together, and they will try to mingle together, but they will never be cohesive. There's no cohesion. And so there's a flaw, there's a weakness. They're destroying their own culture through this mixing of iron and clay. I said this in 2014. Go check it out. And you know what the news was saying? You know what the politicians were saying? Mass migration is just benevolent. It's compassionate. It'll have no negative adverse effect. And I said, you watch. Of course it will. Because the Bible predicted it, and we have common sense. Lauren Southern, Britt Pettibone, and Martin Sellner are all conservatives. At least Lauren Southern is a Christian, and they were all denied entry into the UK. This happened this week. Nigel Farage got involved in this, and he tweeted, "Anti-terrorism laws." You want to talk about justice? Why is this happening? Because we never took hold of the legal system in revival. We never corrected the flaws and the evil of the legal system. And so many people suffer. And when the legal system allows all this kind of suffering, there is no peace. Peace on earth means justice on earth for all the grace-only people. Grace does not bring peace. Justice brings peace. Grace brings you righteousness. You need to understand, God said He loves both righteousness and justice. So undocumented migrants in the UK have rights. But a conservative Christian is not allowed to enter the UK. Basically, Sharia is already being enforced in England. And this is the future, because Australia often follows either England or America. So this is without saying anything, one religion enforcing its values on the legal system. Why aren't Christians doing it? Do you understand that they are actively changing the legal system? And Christians are saying, why would Pastor Steve talk about justice? Get your head out of the ostrich hole. and realize without justice, our legal system is going to be mutated. And now they're using our laws against us. The law, Christians, affects everything. You want to know how to affect society? You must affect the law. You want to affect the economy? You must affect the law. Everything begins with the law. And because Christians have heard a lie that God has done away with the law, we have no sense of justice, and we're not known as ministers of justice. And no Christian is called upon to be experts of justice. I am. I am, because I study God's Word. How could you get a higher law than that? Total justice, total order, total peace is possible on earth. If the Bible starts out with the law, everything in this world starts out with the law. The economy depends on the law. You have to study that to understand it. The UK Home Office concluded that Southern's presence in the country is, quote, not conducive to the public good. In other words, we can find no crime committed. You understand the wording of that? She did nothing wrong. We find her presence offensive, is what they're saying. But that's not a crime. What this is like the poster says, looks like you've had a bit too much to think. Looks like the thought police are out, and what they're enforcing is what's called, in a movie, The Minority Report, pre-crime. We now have, in the year 2018, a first widely publicized instance of pre-crime. If you haven't watched the movie, pre-crime means that the police will catch you before the crime is committed because they just know you will commit the crime, even though you haven't done it yet. It's called pre-crime. This is 1984, just arrived a little bit late, 2018. It's just like George Orwell's fictional thought crime in the novel 1984. He talked about a tyrant state, a tyranny that will come upon the world because it's heading towards socialism, where we keep giving up our rights into a big government, a socialist government that tells us we can't do anything without them. Well, how did we survive for the past 6,000 years? Nobody had welfare, big police state, none of this. We were fine. But now most kids absolutely believe 1984. We must have big government take care of everything. We couldn't possibly build a road without the government. Well, how did roads get built all the way from the east coast of Plymouth Rock to California? It wasn't government involvement. People decided to build roads. Of course you build a road. If you're involved in community, you love your neighbor, you want to engage in commerce. But nobody thinks this anymore. Everybody absolutely is fixed on this idea that is fairly new to the world. So what is hate crime? Let me read to you from the Metropolitan Police of England. What is hate crime? Quote, if someone does something that isn't a criminal offense, but the victim, well, wait a second, how do you have a victim if there's no offense? But the victim or anyone else believes it was motivated by prejudice or hate, we would class this as a hate incident. Though what the perpetrator has done may not be against the law, their reasons for doing it are. This means it may be possible to charge them with an offense. And so they detain Lauren Southern for 6 hours at the border and asked her how serious she is about her Christianity. I said it's coming. And the people who listen don't believe me. I guess some of you do believe me, that's why you're subscribed, of course. But we're not preaching end time just to rapture now, get away. We have to live this life and be salt and light for as long as Jesus delays. And we have to impact the judicial system, the justice system. Otherwise, there will be no justice and no peace. And they will keep encroaching because one thing about government, they keep growing, they never shrink back. One thing about taxes, they keep growing, they don't reduce. You understand? It's like boiling a frog. You just get him in lukewarm water, tepid water first, and you turn up the heat slowly. Because if you boil it at the beginning, the frog has the ability, as soon as it jumps in, to jump out. So they always start off, well, tax would be 5%. You won't feel it so much, so you won't complain. Then it will be 9%. Then it will be 15%. Now we got in Australia 40% tax. People used to go to have revolutionary wars over much, much less oppression. But everyone accepts it because, well, you can't live without government. You can't live without these services. Now, we believe the Bible. We have to, as much as we can, comply. But it ever gets to the point where they're completely unjust, and this seems very unjust, then we need to call upon leaders who have influence, like Nigel Farage, like some righteous leaders, to change the situation and bring in a biblical system. And the biblical system is the best for everybody. Some of the Christians critique and say, how would it work? You're saying everybody has to be Christian. No, dummy. The 10 Commandments work. You don't have to all be Christian. Everybody benefits. Amen? So we put this out not too long ago, censored, our Orwellian 1984 future. I mean, how prophetic is this? Many of you never listened to this. You were not here. Censored. Now we're going to put this on play on demand. That means you can go, buy it, and you can get access and watch it immediately on your whatever device. No need to wait. This thing is so urgent. I'm going to keep putting up more videos on Play on Demand. So look out for that at discover.org.au/shop.